Police exchange gunfire with murder suspect at a Kai Tak public housing estate. Protest march ahead of the 25th anniversary of the June 4th crackdown. And a prisoner exchange between the US and the Taliban. Good evening. The man who was murdered lived in the same building where the suspect was found. The murder victim was shot 3 times. As Evelina Leung reports, police are still looking for a motive behind the killing.
Police rushed to Kai Ting Estate at Kai Tak last night after receiving a report that a man was found lying unconscious at a lift lobby of Lok Ching House. They sealed off the entrance and questioned the residents. No one was allowed into the building. The murder happened at around 11 last night. The victim was a 43-year-old man surnamed Liu. There were 3 gunshot wounds on his chest and arm. He was rushed to United Christian Hospital, where he was certified dead shortly after midnight. This man, who lives in the same building, said he heard a loud argument and then gunshots. This resident, meanwhile, said he heard 3 shots fired. According to an initial police investigation, the victim was an air conditioning mechanic who lived alone. Officers are still looking for a motive behind the killing. Osbert Chow, superintendent of the Kowloon East Crime Headquarters, said they are looking into the victim's background to see if any personal grudges were involved. He added that based on their observation, the attacker used a 7.62mm handgun and the shots were not fired continuously. Police searched the victim's apartment and found no illegal substances. Evelina Leung, TVB News.
Now, police exchanged gunfire with that murder suspect at a public housing estate in Kai Tak, as we stated earlier. This happened hours after a 43-year-old man was shot and killed in the same building last night. Special Duties Unit officers broke into an apartment where the suspect was located, only to find him lying unconscious on the floor. He later died in hospital. As Vicky Kung reports, police believe the man shot himself before he was arrested.
Three gunshots rang out at Kai Ching Estate in Kai Tak at about 11 this morning. A fourth shot sounded 13 minutes later as police officers ushered journalists to a covered area facing Lok Ching House, the building the suspect was in.
We believe that the suspect has fired 2 shots, and we have returned fire 1. And there is at least, and there are also 1 shot when we break into the premises.
Police broadcast warnings in Cantonese, urging residents at the scene to shut their windows. 2 Special Duties Unit officers attempted to break into an apartment where the suspect was spotted.
This suspect is involved in firearm offences, and in order to have much more safety precaution, SDU is being called.
Meanwhile, another team of policemen went up to the doorway and hurled stun grenades into the flat. The SDU then entered through a window of the 10th floor apartment, only to find the suspect lying unconscious on the floor. Police believe the suspect committed suicide by killing himself with a gun. Officers said the man is a 51-year-old Hong Konger who's unemployed. Police said they identified the suspect's exact location and cordoned off the whole floor overnight. Residents on other floors of the building were not evacuated.
We have also taken another precaution measure is to phone up to all the tenants who reside at the same floor with the suspect, telling them that don't go out, lock the door, and tell them how to keep safe. And that's the reason why we can ask the STU to raid the premises immediately.
Police seized 2 guns from the apartment. An ambulance took the injured suspect to United Christian Hospital, where he was declared dead at 12:51 p.m. Vicky Kung, TVB News.
Well, on to the other big local story of the day, and a protest march took place on Hong Kong Island this afternoon ahead of the 25th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square crackdown. The event organizer says 3,000 people joined the march from Victoria Park to the central government offices. Police put the figure at around 1,900 at the peak of the rally, and some protesters are continuing their march tonight to the central government's liaison office in Weston. Well, our Rani Samtani is standing by there right now. Rani, tell us more about what's happening right now.
Good evening, Tony and Sonia. Hundreds of protesters from student group Scholarism and the League of Social Democrats arrived here at the liaison office at about 6:30 p.m. The whole street is filled with protesters who have brought flowers and props with them. But because the small area outside the liaison office isn't big enough for all the protesters, officers split them into groups and have instructed them to enter the area one at a time to protest and then leave the area. The police are now refusing entry to one group because they have lots of props and very big props with them, and this has created quite a few scuffles between the protesters. However, this afternoon, protesters were very peaceful and obeyed the police officers' directions during the rally. Calling for democracy on the mainland and justice for those who died in the 1989 Tiananmen Square crackdown, protesters began their march from Victoria Park at 3 p.m. Carrying banners and chanting slogans, they marched via Hennessy Road through Wan Chai to the central government offices in Admiralty. One group carried a coffin to symbolize the lives lost 25 years ago. Another group drove a mock military tank and criticized the Chinese government for political suppression. Among the marchers were mainland human rights activists who came to Hong Kong just to take part in the rally.
I think it's my responsibility to be here to memorize the victims of June 4th massacre. The Chinese government is trying their best to hide the truth of Tiananmen massacre, and they fear Chinese people to discuss Tiananmen and any other massacres happened in the history.
I think this is very important for the democracy of China, and I think if I can join this and I can make this progress.
Despite the sweltering heat, several different groups joined today's rally. They said they hope to send a message to the central government that the June 4th incident will never be forgotten.
The workers and the students in 1989, they came out in Tiananmen Square to occupy, and they have the determination to fight against the dictatorship. And today we need to continue to struggle.
Especially important here, of course, because it's the 25th anniversary. And I was a teacher in China back in 1989, and I always want to do whatever I can to support people in China who are fighting for democracy and human rights and freedom.
Outside Southorn Playground in Wan Chai, a pro-establishment group chanted at the protesters. This resulted in a shouting match, and police had to break up scuffles between the rival groups. Police closed 1.5 lanes for those in the protest march and kept one lane open for emergency vehicles and other cars. Lee Chuk-yan, chairman of the Hong Kong Alliance in support of patriotic democratic movements of China, criticized Beijing for recently banning all discussions on the Tiananmen Square crackdown. He said 25 years later and many lies are still circulating. Beijing authorities continue to say that the army opened fire on the students in self-defense, Lee said. The student group Scholarism also took part in today's rally and plan to continue to march to the central government liaison office in Western. Rani Samtani, TVB News. Police have surrounded the area outside the liaison office. Most protesters have left now, but one group is still refusing to leave. They said they will not leave until they are allowed to bring their props in front of the liaison office. Today's demonstration comes ahead of the candlelight vigil that will be held this coming Wednesday to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square crackdown. That's all from me. Back to you in the studio, Tony and Sonia.
Okay, thank you very much, Rani. And that was Rani Samtani reporting live from Western District. Well, tensions are running high in the Thai capital, Bangkok, once again, as thousands of troops attempt to keep a lid on demonstrations there. Anti-coup protesters who are denouncing the country's military coup have been scuffling with troops as they try to evade a massive security operation aimed at stifling dissent. James Aiken reports.
Armed forces have fanned out across central Bangkok as they attempt to clamp down on demonstrations against the military coup. Almost 6,000 soldiers and police officers have been deployed to lock down the city's major intersections and some shopping malls and train stations. As hundreds of protesters gathered near the Terminal 21 shopping mall in downtown Bangkok, scuffles broke out as uniformed and plainclothes police tried to arrest a man holding a camera. Outside the mall, some protesters held up 3 fingers, their symbol for freedom, equality, and brotherhood. This means anti-coup, says this man. We want democracy. We don't want the military to take control. The military has also banned political gatherings of 5 people or more. With strict laws now imposed against dissent, some protesters are finding creative ways to show opposition. On Saturday, small groups of 4 gathered to read books on the theme of dictatorship and totalitarianism, such as George Orwell's 1984. The army overthrew the nation's elected government last month, claiming it had to restore order after 7 months of demonstrations that had triggered sporadic violence and left the civil administration virtually powerless. Protests against the coup have taken place in Bangkok most days since then, although they have been small and brief. The military leadership has said it will need time to push through reforms it says are needed before new elections can be held. After 3 months of reconciliation, the military says a temporary constitution will be drawn up and an interim prime minister and cabinet then chosen. New elections won't be held for at least a year. James Aiken, TVB News.
After 5 years of captivity, a U.S. soldier was freed by the Taliban in exchange for 5 Afghan prisoners held at the Guantanamo Bay Detention Center. But many are criticizing this particular prisoner swap. They accuse the Obama administration of breaking a long-standing policy that America never negotiates with terrorists.
U.S. Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl was captured by the Taliban in June 2009 when, for reasons unknown, he reportedly walked away from his secure military base in Afghanistan. Over the years, Bergdahl appeared in 5 hostage videos as proof of life. His dramatic prisoner exchange took place in eastern Afghanistan amid several dozen troops of U.S. Special Operations Forces and a band of about 18 Taliban fighters. Both sides were heavily armed as American attack helicopters hovered in the air. Without incident, Bergdahl was safely returned in good condition and able to walk. President Obama broke the news with Bo's parents at his side.
This morning, I called Bob and Janie Bergdahl and told them that after nearly 5 years in captivity, their son Bo is coming home. And he wasn't forgotten by his country, because the United States of America does not ever leave our men and women in uniform behind.
In Bergdahl's hometown of Hailey, Idaho, the community got busy preparing a Heroes Welcome Home celebration.
It's an incredible day. The emotions are high. There's euphoria out there. There's excitement. The balloons are going up.
Woohoo! I'm hooting and hollering. I think it's great that Bo got released.
But the consequences of Bergdahl's release have many Americans criticizing Obama's decision to negotiate with terrorists. The White House claims it didn't negotiate directly with the Taliban. Technically, they use the Qatari government as intermediary to do all the negotiating. Still, several lawmakers and the public demand to know how the administration will ensure the Afghan prisoners will not retaliate.
Are they going to go back to what they were doing before? So somebody should be looking into that too, I guess, so we don't have any more terrorism.
U.S. intelligence experts are certain negotiating with terrorists puts more American lives at risk because there's now more incentive to capture U.S. hostages.
And still ahead on our news tonight, Carrie Lam tries to clarify her comments about the Cultural Hub project. The Medical Council seeks to speed up investigations into complaints against doctors. And violent clashes between police and protesters in Turkey.
Group D, aka the Group of Death, features England, Uruguay, and Italy. Only 2 will come out alive, and you know what that means. The one to watch, England versus Italy. No football fans in Hong Kong want to miss that.
Where am I going? I'm leaving to Japan. I'm participating in a summer course held by Nikkei, studying at an established Japanese institution with a long history and good academic reputation. If you want to learn Japanese the right way, come join Nikkei's overseas summer course in Japan.
The hottest Dragon Boat event. Join us at the Sun Life Stanley International Dragon Boat Championships. 2nd of June, 2014, Stanley, Main Beach. Life's brighter with your support.
The war is over!
It's gonna be fun. Astrid, she's been glaring at me all night.
Well, you did try and have her killed.
I said I was sorry. If you want me to leave, I can leave.
No. The Tomorrow People, Tuesday at 10:50 on Pearl.
And we're back tonight with more local news. Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam sought to clarify comments today which suggested too much money was being spent on the West Kowloon Cultural District. Evelyn Leung with details.
More than $20 billion has been poured into the West Kowloon Cultural District. Originally, the amount was thought to be enough to build all 3 phases of the project. But a few days ago, Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam said it was worth considering whether all 3 phases were necessary. She also said it would be a waste to build the new facilities if the cultural development in Hong Kong is not up to standard. But her comments did not go down so well with some. Anthony Wong, a theatre director, used a football analogy to criticize Lam.
If
the Hong Kong football team doesn't win the World Cup, does it mean we won't build any football stadiums or develop the sport? Lam today attempted to clarify her statement. She said she wasn't commenting on the city's cultural standard. She simply said a number of factors must be taken into consideration while continuing with these projects. Evelyn Lang, TVB News.
Singer Peter Chung and his wife, ex-actress Eugenia Lau, waited for 12 inquiry sessions before the medical council arrived at a verdict on the death of their day-old baby 9 years ago. Council member Tse Hung Hing said a review is underway to speed up investigations into complaints about doctors. Stephanie Choi reports.
The Medical Council typically spends 2 to 7 years processing complaints and conducting inquiries. Council member Tse Hung Hing, who oversees complaints, admitted this process is too long. He said it can take 2 to 3 years before a complaint is handed over to the Preliminary Investigation Committee. He suggested the council should aim to shorten a complainant's wait for the launch of an inquiry.
We are proposing to increase the number of lay assessors and medical assessors. The goal is to shorten the waiting time by half, because we could start an inquiry simultaneously, 2 inquiries at the same time. Then we can shorten the waiting time by half.
But he admitted this objective will require the cooperation of council members.
If we are going to double the number of inquiries per year, then we are prepared to attend more inquiries every year.
Jie said inquiries used to be faster until the council's policy changed following a Court of Appeal ruling that a lengthy inquiry session on a single day might affect the council's judgment.
Previously, we have been trying to finish in one single day. Indeed, we have extended the inquiry even after midnight, but we are being criticized. The Court of Appeal said that this is unfair to the defendant.
9 years ago, singer Peter Chung and his wife, former actress Eugenia Lau, lost their baby 26 hours after its birth. The couple filed a complaint in 2005 with the medical council, but it was rejected. A second complaint was filed in 2009 based on an expert report written up in a civil claim against the doctors. It wasn't until last week, after 12 inquiry sessions, that the medical council found the presiding obstetrician guilty of professional misconduct. Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
To Turkey now, where violent clashes rocked the streets of Ankara and Istanbul yesterday. Riot police had to use water cannon and tear gas to disperse those throwing petrol bombs, burning barricades, and hurling stones. Anti-government protesters had defied a ban set by Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He had given police strict orders to prevent all protests during the one-year anniversary of the country's biggest anti-government demonstrations. Last year's deadly demonstrations left at least a dozen people killed and thousands injured during months of protests. All right, Tony, I'm excited. We're christening the new set with your sports.
Absolutely, yes.
What do you have
we've
for
got
us?
more exciting action from the NBA to talk about. It's all about the San Antonio Spurs against Oklahoma City Thunder. And there were some nail-biting moments for San Antonio fans. But in the end, the Spurs prevailed against OCT to reach the NBA Finals. Still, the Thunder pushed the Spurs all the way, with Kevin Durant a constant threat throughout the game. He had 31 points and 14 rebounds for Oklahoma. The game went into overtime after both sides finished with 101 points. Manu Ginobili missed the winning shot at the buzzer. Tim Duncan stepped up for San Antonio, scoring 7 of his 19 points in overtime. The Spurs held on for a 112-107 win and faced the Miami Heat again in the NBA Finals.
I think they showed an unbelievable amount of fortitude, if I can compliment my own team, humbly. To have that tough loss, especially the Game 6, and not have a pity party and come back this year and get back to the same position, I think that's fortitude. And I'm really proud of them and even happier for them.
Well, let's move on to football now. And Italy suffered a blow ahead of the World Cup this month, losing one of their midfielders because of an injury picked up during a friendly game against Ireland. Also in action last night were the Netherlands and Ghana.
Two World Cup qualifiers, Holland and Ghana, went head-to-head last night, hoping to use the match as a solid training exercise before Brazil. Robin van Persie's early goal was enough to win it for the Dutch, who seemed content to sit back and go into cruise control after that. The Netherlands faced defending champions Spain in their Group B opener, a repeat of the final in South Africa 4 years ago. Italy also got some football under their belt, playing against the Republic of Ireland in the British capital. But the Azzurri suffered a serious blow in the 9th minute when key midfielder Riccardo Montolivo was taken off with a suspected broken leg. The match ended in a 0-0 draw. Italy are in Group D, along with England, Uruguay and Costa Rica.
Some quick update from the Roland Garros tournament, and another top women's seed crashed out of the French Open as Angelique Kerber of Germany lost to Canada's Eugenie Bouchard. And in the men's draw, it's all hanging in the balance for Andy Murray and Philipp Kohlschreiber, who had their epic 5-set